Hi ladies, it's Lori. I am here today to film the cloth pad tag video. I seen this go around about a year ago on YouTube, and then it's made a bit of a resurgence lately. I've seen a few people pad tie cloth, and Laura Taylor and a few others film it recently, and I think the questions are a lot of fun, so I figured why not film one myself. I will put all of the questions in the description box down below, so if you feel like filming the video, feel free to grab them from there. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone who wished me better from my last What I Wore This Month video. My voice was kind of atrocious, and I do again apologize for that. It turns out I have laryngitis, so I'm feeling much better now. So hopefully, I have a little bit of a lingering cough, so hopefully I don't disrupt this video too much with that. But otherwise, let's get right into it. So the first question is your favorite style. My favorite style is an all-in-one. I do have some exposed core style pads, which I also like. I've used only one or two of the pads with inserts, and I don't have them anymore. They weren't really my thing. It's a little bit too complicated. So I really prefer the all-in-one style where the pad is turned and top stitched. So the core is completely hidden, and there's a hole where the maker of the pad has turned the pad from being inside out to right side out and then top stitched. So that is my favorite style of pad. So my favorite brand, I really can't say that I have a favorite brand. I've purchased from many makers, and honestly, for the vast majority of them, I've loved their pads. They all serve a purpose for different times. I have to say though, my favorite style of pad, as I said, is an all-in-one, but I also really like thin pads. I often will wear a pad along with a cup, but occasionally if I'm moving a lot or something goes awry, the cup will leak. So I always wear a long enough pad. So what I really like are pads that are super thin. And two makers right now that I am purchasing from on a fairly regular basis that make super thin pads are Lazy Creek Boutique, which is this one here. A lot of her pads are also knit, which is one of my favorite toppers, but we'll get to that. And then I also recently found Grayson Street Emporium. She's been around for a little while, and I stalked her on Etsy and finally was able to pick up a few of her pads in the last couple of months, and I really like them. They're super thin. My favorite color, I've got a few stacks of pads, so let's see if we can move these out here. This is a good example. My favorite color is not one color. It's bright rainbow multicolor pads. So this is one that I made myself. So I really like bright colors with black accents would probably be my favorite, but I also just like the bright color OBVs. This is a custom knit. This is a quilter's cotton. And then this is a minky. So these are all different toppers, but they're all nice and bright and fun. And that's probably my favorite color would be rainbow, I suppose. So my favorite prints. I really have a soft spot for coffee pads. If I see a coffee pad, I have a really hard time passing it up. But I'd have to say that my favorite prints, just by going by what's in my stash, would have to be 80s prints. I am in my early 30s. I was born in the 80s, and it's just kind of what I grew up with. So of course it's something that I love. So this is a little pile, it's a pile of cloth pads that are all kind of 80s themes. So this is one I made myself. This is a custom print cotton top from Spoonflower. And then we've got a Wonder Woman pad, a Labyrinth pad, of course Edward Scissorhands, a Little Shop of Horrors, Rocky Horror. This is a new acquisition, and I swear to God, I see this pad and it just makes me so happy. I absolutely love this print. Gummy Bears, Rainbow Bright. This is a music theme pad, but it's Sid Vicious / Sex Pistols, also nice and bright. And then like a Tim Burton mashup with a few of his 80s characters. So that would have to be my favorite type of print. So my favorite length would be probably a thin 14-inch if I'm not wearing a cup, and a thin 12-inch if I'm wearing a cup. So my favorite topper fabric would have to be a tie. I really, really adore OBV pads. I think they're fantastic for stay dry, people who have, concerns over feeling nice and dry when they're on their period. I find that this works very well for me personally. I also like all the different textures and colors of the custom print OBVs. But as I said, this is a really hard question for me as well, because as much as I love OBV, I also really, really love knit pads. And again, it's the same as OBV. I find that I stay really dry with knit pads. It's also very soft and it's kind of stretchy, and it just conforms to my underwear really well, and I find it really comfortable against my body. The favorite backing fabric for me would have to be hard-faced Winpro. So both of these, and I really like black backing fabric just because it kind of goes with everything, and black is one of my favorite colors. I know it's a shade, not a color, but it is. It's one of my favorite colors. So this is a little bit different than, say, the Winpro that you see on Yurt Craft pads. This is a standard Winpro, so it's, I believe it would be soft on both sides, at least the standard Winpro that I have is. It's also a little bit thicker. And then hard-faced Winpro is like one layer of fleece. It's got a soft side, and on the other side, it is flat. I find it, if you get the right kind of hard-faced Winpro, it's completely waterproof. I have purchased one independently that wasn't. It was more like a micro fleece. But this hard-faced Winpro, I believe it's called Power Shield Winpro. It's a type of Power Shield Winpro, is waterproof. And even though these pads are extremely thin, I've never had an issue with leaking through them. My favorite pad for overnight, pardon me, right now, they have to be Homestead Emporium pads. These are massive and curvy pads. I'm one of the people that toss and turn a lot in my sleep, and there's no chance of me bleeding off of the sides of these, or off the back or off the front or what have you. So I've got a few different sizes for these guys, and depending on what point I am in my cycle, I'll wear these. If I run out of these is the first ones I grab for. But I also really love, I have a few Goddess pads from Mimi's Dreams. These are 16 inches, and these work fantastic for overnight as well as the 16-inch Yurt Craft pads. But I have to say the Homestead Emporium are my favorite right now for overnight. So my favorite pads for out and about would have to be either my Lazy Creek Boutique, because of how thin they are, or again, the Grace and Street Emporium ones that I now have, just again for thinness and for comfort. All right. And then my favorite panty liners. Where did I put them is the better question. Okay, here they are. All right, so my favorite panty liners are ones that I actually make myself. These are roughly about 10 inches. I don't wear panty liners on a daily basis, but I wear them sometimes when I'm ovulating and sometimes when I'm coming up to my period, and I do tend to now spot for at least 24 hours beforehand, so they come in handy then. So these are all the same size. They're 10-inch all-in-one pads, and the reason I like these is because they're super thin, and they're also small enough that I don't really notice when I'm wearing them. They are Quilter's cotton topped and flannel backed, and the flannel helps them really stay in place. And then they also have one layer of flannel inside, so they're slightly absorbent as well, even though they are very, very thin. So those would have to be my favorite liners. My favorite pad in my stash. Now that is an impossible question when you have as many pads as I do. I have a huge stash. It's more of a collection for me. If you've seen my pad stash video, you would know that it's an absurd amount. But it's what I choose to spend some of my disposable income on. It makes me happy, and I love supporting other work at home WAMs, or moms or not moms, that sew from home. And so yeah, so that is a really, really hard question for me. But I would have to say this, if you've seen some of my earlier What I Wore This Month videos, this was my favorite pad for quite a while. It changes here and there, but I always go back to just being so in love with this pad, because at the time that I got this, I had never seen a Frida Kahlo print, and I didn't know that Alexander Henry was making a whole line of it. So when I seen this print come up from Allison at Hoo Hoo Rags, I lost it. Frida Kahlo's, to me, she's one of the most iconic women of our time. Like she's an extremely fascinating human being, and she's an amazingly talented artist. And she was very outspoken in a time that being outspoken was really frowned upon. And she also lived in a country where being outspoken in that kind of way can get you in a lot of trouble. So she's quite iconic, and I absolutely love her. So this pad will always probably be one of my favorites. All right, so my favorite detergent is, I did have it in my What I Wore This Month video. It's a lavender all natural detergent, but I'd have to say that the one that I actually use the most is the Sweet Pea Method detergent. And I bought that because my daughter has very sensitive skin and I wash her clothes in it. And then I found that it worked really well on, random child stains that she gets. So I also use it for my cloth pads. But I intermingle with the lavender detergent as well. Favorite stain remover. If I had to answer this question 6 weeks ago, I would have said Bunch of Farmers, because that's the one that's worked the best for me for the longest period of time. But I've recently, I don't know, I think it's because I've temporarily went on hormonal birth control, and it actually changed the pH balance of my menstrual blood. Prior to being on hormonal birth control, I never had an issue with stains using Bunch of Farmers, and the last 2 cycles I've had issues with stains, and Bunch of Farmers has not even, it's faded them slightly, but it didn't even come close to totally removing them. So I've actually had to retreat a few pads with Fells Napa, and I also used my stain remover bar from the Soapworks, and those 2 seem to be working really well for me. But my favorite stain removers are my stain sticks. Like, I pretty much always go to a stain stick. I've tried the gels and the sprays, and I prefer stain sticks overall. Favorite storage solution. So if you had seen my cloth pad stashed videos, I use a 4-drawer black plastic Sterilite container. And that has been my favorite storage solution. While I am menstruating, I use a wet bag that I hang up and I put my soiled pads in. So those are the two items that I use to store my pads. My favorite place to purchase, of course, would have to be Etsy. 90% of all of the pads I order are from Etsy. I occasionally may order from Facebook, but honestly, I really just prefer the buying experience of Etsy. I like being able to type in search criteria and scan through all the different pads available. As I said, I don't really have a favorite maker. I love trying new makers. I love, like, for example, Grayson Street Emporium. I found her just browsing on Etsy, and her pads are absolutely amazing and are exactly what I look for in a pads. They have this slight flare. They have the narrower wings, and they're thin. And she uses the materials I like. So had I not been able to just type in search criteria and look through Etsy, I might have found her eventually, because Pad Thai Cloth recently ordered a few of her pads and they were featured in her videos. But otherwise, I wouldn't have known about her. So I really like the shopping experience of Etsy. I find it fun just to kind of browse through everything that's presently available. So the last question is my favorite thing about cloth. And really, this is my favorite thing about cloth. How gorgeous these pads are. Like, they're everything from hilarious to retro, things that make you remember your childhood, to they can be empowering. And they're just so beautiful. They're so fun. They're fun to make. They're fun to buy. They're just all around enjoyable to use. And, I could list 50 great things about using cloth, but I think that just being able to look at my stash and being able to, flip through and pick a pad that makes me feel good and, interests me in that moment is one of my favorite things about using reusable menstrual products. So that is the end of my cloth pad tag. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments section down below. I do try to respond to everybody's comments. And of course, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. Bye.